Drink some water before we get started. Hold up. Okay. Just like that. Welcome back, everybody. Yeah. Before we get started, I want to ask you an important question. What does lake trout have to do with elk? What does elk have to do with the six degrees of separation? What does that have to do with the small world hypothesis? And what does that have to do with a car ride I took back last Christmas to California? What does this all have to do? What are you talking about, Raf? What are you saying? What are you speaking right now? In this book I'm reading, right here, it talks about the relationship between, and let me quote this right. It's literally the name of the chapter. Wow. I'm trying to be so careful, like not to rip it or anything. I just really, since it's so new, like I don't want to damage it too crazy. But chapter 1 is called Wolves, Bears, and Fish. And all three of these things and their effects on Yellowstone and elk. I mean, it kind of makes sense when you think about it off first hearing it. Wolves eat elk. Bears, you might be like, well, bears eat elk too, maybe. I don't know. I'm not a bear guy. I don't know that much about bears. I just know they're big. And they'll fuck you up if you run, if especially if they have cubs and it's big old mama bear. Yeah, you fucked. And fish. How does fish play a role in in elk? Like how does the number of fish affect the elk? Well, in this beautiful, it's pretty well written. Um, it's a story with a main through line messaging, but I'm gonna take the key ideas from it, kind of try my best to summarize what the chapter I read here was telling me. So we all know that wolves are a natural predator, right? And they're very common in North America, especially Yellowstone, especially in the 1920s and or around that time period. Um, uh, yeah. So around that time period, 1920, uh, there was a lot of wolves in Yellowstone and around Yellowstone. The reason why this started to affect people is because wolves would attack cattle and livestock from local or nearby farmers and ranchers, right? And so, because people were like, oh, these wolves, people are very selfish. And they see that these wolves are affecting their livestock. Keep in mind, we'll get into it later. Never mind. I'll save that for later. And so, they decided to kill or hunt a lot of these wolves. It says right here, almost every single pack was wiped out by 1926. And wolves would be occasionally spotted up until 1930. After that, they were pretty much gone from the Yellowstone area. And because of this, its natural prey, elk, well, which is one of the main ones, started to overpopulate. And the overpopulation of the elk brought a lot of harm to Yellowstone. Uh, just because, well, it, it give me a second. Let me. So this is where it gets strange. This is where the connections start to happen. So once the wolves disappeared, the elk started to overpopulate, right? Because now that their main predator is gone, there's nobody to really hurt them. And so the bear population and the bears start to decline as well after the wolves disappear. And now you might be thinking, what? That doesn't make a lot of sense. And that didn't make sense for me neither. Because I was like, if I was a bear and I was just hungry, I'd just eat elk. But, alright, let's just give it. So, the reason why bears were starting to die out, or not die out, but just like start to see a decrease in population overall, was because these elk would graze on these elk would just have free reign on everything, right? So they'd go out to riverbanks, which before riverbanks weren't safe for elk. Anything could be hiding, or uh, and so a lot of in these riverbanks, there's a lot of like berries, trees, like small trees, stuff like that. And so the elk would eat the berries, eat the nearby trees, and of course, they share that resource with the bears. Bears eat a lot of berries, especially when they're bulking up for hibernation. So yeah, a lot of bears found themselves in competition with the elk for these berries. And of course, the bears don't really hunt elk, so it's not like they can just fucking kill them. But whatever. So the elk are overpopulated now, and I guess the bears are on a decline. But also a lot of birds, a lot of native songbirds are also starting, because like I said, the elk are just eating anything, everything, anything and everything up right now. So they're destroying a lot of saplings, a lot of small trees. So a lot of trees aren't allowed to grow, which then the birds can't, blah blah blah. And it also affected beavers, believe it or not, because trees weren't allowed to grow. The beavers, of course, like it takes a while so the beavers would already chop down the nearby trees, and then since there's no new trees growing, they couldn't like build as many dams, or like the dams that they wanted, or shelter that they wanted. So the ponds that they would create wouldn't be as nutritionally also slash biodivergent enough, something like that. That's what I got from the chapter. I could be totally wrong. And so then, because the beavers also started to take a toll. Um, and all that because the wolves. There were no wolves to hunt elk up until, let me see when. Up until 1955. So about 70, what is that? 73 years. Something like that. I don't know. I'm not a mathematician. So 73 years later, people start to realize that, wow, the elk are kind of a problem. So they bring down wolves from Canada, and from other parts. I think they're just normal default gray wolves, nothing crazy. They bring them to Yellowstone. Water break. Hold up one sec. And so then, because about 70 years or so has passed since elk had any natural prey, um, the wolves had a fucking field day on the elk. Oh boy, they went crazy. And we saw the wolves the wolf population to start growing, and the elk population decline a little bit. Just because they were actually being hunted, the balance was restored. And whatnot. But this with this sorry, I'm like thinking. um so yeah, everything's magically returned, magically, right? That's what we want to think. There was still that 70-year period of development where it's just, hold up, let me think, because now I know where I want to take this, I just don't know how to take us to there. um so elk numbers start to decline a little bit because they have a natural predator, right? So now, on a completely different note, in Yellowstone, they introduced this invasive fish called lake trout. That's their name. I don't know if I could elaborate further. I'm not knowledgeable. But these lake trout are found everywhere. They're especially found in Canada and the Great Lakes. They're actually endangered in the Great Lakes. They're an endangered species in the Great Lakes, like in that area, just because of overfishing and stuff. So, one way or another, this fish gets brought into Yellowstone. And slowly they start suffocating the salmon, let me see what they're called. They start suffocating the because I think they're just called cutthroat. Cutthroat. Oh, it's a trout. It's not a salmon. It's a trout. So, um, so these lake trout start suffocating the cutthroat trout. And what I mean by that is, they multiply faster, they eating more of the resources, and so the trout population starts to decline a little bit, right? With this, bears are affected. The reason why bears are affected is because, unlike the cutthroat trout, these lake trout, they nest in deep waters. So they go to the middle of the lake. They like have their kids in the middle of the lake, and that's where they do their whole thing, and that's where they die and all that jazz, and they migrate to. Compared to the deep throat pause, the the other trout, compared to the other trout, which nest in shallow waters. That's why you always see the bears and like the rapids just kind of fishing them bitches out, because that's where they nest, right? So it's way easier for them to to catch right there. They're right there in shallow water. You could probably go over there and catch one too if you really thought about it. But the bears, with the declining numbers of the trout that they specifically like to eat, and the other trout being harder to catch because they just chill in the deep end, they've resorted to eating elk, like baby calves, because um, through one reason or another, they still need, they're carnivores, they're natural carnivores, so they go for small prey. So they find baby elks and they fucking eat them. That's their new target. So now you have baby babies. Your babies are getting eaten as a population, and your elder people are getting, like, your older elk are getting eaten. So now the 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 age range of elk is drastically like smaller, right? Because if you're young and you're old are being targeted, it's like a shrinkage. There's a shrinkage. So right now, elk are now not endangered. Oh, there's still a lot of elk out there, I'm sure, but they're not as, it's interesting just seeing how fish in the water affects the population of elk. Or if, obviously, the more clear one is if you take a predator out, and seeing the consequences of that. And the reason why I mention this, I think this is something interesting that I thought of. So in the in a car, this was back in December around Christmas. We took a car ride to California. It was me and my parents, and we had a drive there. So if you don't know, from Nebraska to California, it's roughly a 24-hour drive, at least from where I'm at, which is as about as east as you can get. And the place I was going to San Bernardino. So it's kind of south middle California. So, yeah. In that 24-hour drive, I noticed something. I noticed that we don't make a lot of turns. You don't turn a lot when you're traveling to another state or anywhere in general. And so in my head, I did some math and I thought about it. I sat there in the car while I was actively driving, and maybe this is a bad thing and I should have thought more about, driving, staying focused on the highway. I thought of every turn I made from the leaving destination. I counted, I'm like, okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I was like, after turn 5 was like 600 miles ago, and we're still going. And then next thing you know, we make it to California, and I'm still on turn 5. Then turn 6, 7, 8, and 9, and we're at our destination. 2,000 miles away, we are in our destination. And I didn't take more than 9 turns. I found that fascinating. I kept that in the back of my mind. And then during that same trip in California, I counted all the turns to everywhere I was going. There was 5 turns to get to this place, 7 turns to get to that one. Keep in mind, I only counted like natural turns, like turns that you would take on purpose, purposeful turns, because you yeah, you could always get somewhere the long way and take like 30 different turns, and like the most optimal path turn wise. And I came up with this little theory, or this little like stupid thing in my head where I'm like, could you realistically get anywhere in the United States from point A to point B in less than 12 turns? And I think 12, like I said, I'd have to do my own research, run the algorithm, run the whatever. And it's unforced turns. And the most optimal route where turns are minimized is 12 turns, the least amount of turns you can take to get somewhere. And I'm not going to count like, oh, I drive to a dead end and then left is the only way to go, because I feel like that's just naturally, the way to follow. So I didn't count none of those because those aren't really turns. You just got nowhere to go. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I should, but then we'd have to adjust the number and all that. But I told this stupid theory to one of my friends, and she was like, dude, it sounds a lot like the 6 degrees of separation. And I was like, the what? And so the 6 degrees of separation, I'm reading this from Wikipedia just to give you a clear definition of what it is the idea that people are six or fewer social connections away from each other. As a result, a chain of a friend statements can be made to connect any two people in a maximum of 6 steps. Or this is also known as the six handshake rule, meaning that a person shaking hands with 30 people mathematically means that a person shaking hands with 30 people, and then those 30 would shake hands with another 30. Repeating this over 6 times will allow every person in the population as large as the United States to have shaken hands 7 times for the whole world. So there's just enough people. What I'm trying to say is the world is okay. No, I'm getting too far ahead of myself. So my friend tells me about this theory. I was like, huh, that's interesting. I do a little more digging. Right. And then this theory comes from Stanley Milgram. And if you know Milgram, you know that's the Stanford prison experiment. It's all that overrated TBH. Like, we get it. He didn't even do it on purpose. Some crazy shit happened. Okay. It was unethical. Whatever. I'm playing, obviously, but not really. Okay. So then he came up with this little theory called or it's not a theory. There's just a little thing called the small world experiment. So it was conducted by Stanley and other researchers to examine the average path length for social networks of people in the United States. And the research suggested that human society is a small world type network, characterized by its short path lengths. The experiments were often associated with the phrase 6 degrees of separation, although Milgram did not use this term himself. So basically, what does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with anything? What does those 3 little things that you just gave to us have to do with anything? And I think what they have to do, and at least what it means for me after reading and just kind of thinking through, because this is just stuff that's just rattling in my head as I try to become the best human being that I can be, because I can be a pretty bad person. I'm sure, there's plenty of people out there that I've hurt and whatnot, but the world really is small. And so, like you said, or like I said, like you, like I said, 6 people is all that separates you and a completely random stranger. And maybe that's not true. Maybe it's impossible to connect me and some like Russian soldier in the middle of war right now. Like, how would you connect those? I don't know. But there's a way. If there's a will, there's a way. Actually, there probably there probably is a way you could connect me, because I know I'm from a small town, so, and I know the mayor's, I know the niece's, the mayor's niece, and of course she knows the mayor. The mayor knows the governor. Our governor has worked closely with the president. Our president has closely worked with Putin. Putin has probably, one of his generals, and then the general probably knows the soldier. I don't know how many people that was, but even if it was more than 6, that's still pretty impressive, right? That we got to the other side of the world just like that. And the reason why I bring this up, and the reason why I told you the story about the trout, the elk, the bears, the whatever, because your actions have consequences. And boy, that is a lesson I have been learning a lot. Uh, Especially recently. And I know what you're thinking. Well, duh. Of course your actions have consequences, but I don't mean that in like, I mean, yeah, of course, if you do terrible things, the people around you are going to reflect that, or the lack of people around you is going to reflect that. But it's also like, think of like positivity, like being a positive person. Like, if you're positive with this person, if you're nice, then the other person's more, it's kind of like you kind of mimic what you see almost. And when people see people being kind, they'll tend to be kind. And the reason why I say that is because, like the wolves, like the elk, the trout, the whatever, when you introduce that element into your life or into the life of others around you, just know that it might not affect them or maybe the next person in the line, but it might affect the third person in the line. Or it might, you kind of get what I'm trying to say here. Is, while maybe what you do and say isn't immediate, the consequences might not be immediate. They might never hit you because they're too busy dealing with something else. Like when the humans removed wolves, that was felt. The bears felt that. The beavers felt that. The river, I didn't talk about this, but the river itself started to change shape once the wolves were gone. And I want you to think about that in like a, maybe let's start with like the lotus of control and start with the self. What in you needs to be removed or doesn't need to be removed in order for positive changes to happen in your life, or for not so great things to happen in your life, right? Because, like, let's say an addiction, nicotine addiction, like ripping the vape, or even social media addiction, is like the trout. You kind of put that in there, and it's kind of suffocating these other things around you, these other entities around you, right? Or, you know, or especially with social media, because the hit is so immediate, it's easy to overlook like hard things. You kind of understand. Hey, like I said, this is all things I just thought of like 3 hours ago. This is just what I've been cooking in my mind for the last 3 hours. And I sort of, but not really fully thought it out. But I just thought it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. Um, of just how one little thing could have dire consequences. Um, and the reason why I wanted to connect it to the small world hypothesis is because the world is a very, at least when you experience the world, it's a very selfish, experiencing life is very selfish. Like, you think, you can think that you're doing this for this reason or that reason. You're doing it for someone else, but really you're kind of doing it for yourself. All the good and all the bad. So, and I need to work on this too. I've definitely expressed how much of a negative person I can be. But if you're a negative person, let's say if you're negative to one person, well, that person might be, oh, well, damn, that guy's pretty shitty. Um, and then he might go tell another person. And the word of mouth goes by crazy. And like, that's how reputation is destroyed and whatnot, which is fine, I guess, if you care about reputation and all that. But at like a deeper level, also, it's easy to make the world your enemy almost. Because let's just say, especially something that's relevant for me is college. So let's just say that this person feels negative towards me. Well, this person knows this person and that person and that person and that person, and they hang around that person, so they kind of have to think similarly. And that's kind of how I'm thinking all this. Granted, I have to sit down, I have to think about it more. Maybe get an expert, talk to an expert. Maybe I'll talk to my professors once schools get started about like the implications and all that. But like that's just something that I've been thinking about a lot recently. Uh Especially, I don't know, I've never been pessimistic. I've never been as pessimistic as I have been the last couple years almost. I've been so negative, so selfish. I've been selfish with my with what I put out. Um because I tell people like, I want to be a counselor, I want to be this, I want to be that. But then I have the most negative thoughts running through my head when I'm at work. Granted, I work at a gas station, and that's different. I see so many people from so many walks of life, and they're all just trying to give me a piece of them. At so it gets a little overwhelming, and I definitely have a limit to my social battery. And I've come to learn it's very small. But it's powerful. It's powerful, but it's very small. But um, yeah, I don't know what I'm rambling about. I just thought it was something. It's important. It's important. So yeah. Sorry. So what I was thinking is, like I said, I want to be a counselor, and I can be really negative at work. And if I'm negative to them, what if they go somewhere else and somebody's negative to them, and it's a little heartbreaking. It's a little, you know, I don't know. It's just a thing that I noticed and that I put in my brain. It's like maybe I should put in a little more effort to be nicer. I'm never rude. I'm never plain out rude, but sometimes you walk into work and I'm just emotionless because I'm tired. So like I can't really show anything in my face. But I don't know. That's just me. That's just something I've been thinking about. Cause yeah, I used to be so optimistic. Dude, I used to, it was almost naive. I was very naive. I was very, I definitely had rose colored glasses on to life just because I overcame a lot of negative stuff. And so I just wanted to pursue what made me happy. And it was those comforts. It was comfort. I pursued comfort because I thought that's what I truly would make me happy. And I mean, it did at the time until I got a reality check. And wow, I realized how fucking miserable I am. And some people never take off those glasses. And I don't know. They just live in this delusion almost because their reality is completely different to what's actually going on. And there's almost like this ethics thing where it's like, do I snap this person out of their delusion? You know, like if they're not really hurting anybody, do we is it right, you know, to live this delusional life? Cuz I thought, I thought I was doing great. I was having a power trip. I was having a power trip, bro. Just I tarnished a lot, which looking back on now, I just feel dumb. Like god damn it. Uh and and that, so yeah, so I used to be super optimistic. Now I'm pessimistic, but I'm not pessimistic. I'm pessimistic because I don't trust anything anymore. Because when I was optimistic and happy and all this, I trusted everything and everyone. I thought everybody had good intentions, and all the most, if not all, the trust I had was just walked all over. And for the longest time, I just felt like, and still to now, I still like, it's just people trying to impose their will on me. Definitely felt that when I I couldn't continue with music ed. They were just telling me, "Oh, you know, you're this, this, and this, but we really need more this, this." But I was the whole time I'm thinking like, "Damn, like you guys put me in this position. This is who I like." If it kind of felt like I wasn't being accepted, I'll probably talk more about it some other day. Uh, just all that. Uh, but yeah, so it kind of felt like people were imposing their will on me because I was, I was a nice, optimistic guy. Like I was kind of easy to take advantage of. Um, so yeah, I became very, very bitter now. I'm very selfish. I'm focused on myself. There's a good way and a bad way of doing it, and I'm still trying to walk that line. Just like the reintroduction of wolves, you know, that before my life, I had no predators. There was no predators. I killed them all. I thought I did, and I thought that would make me. I thought if I don't do things that are hard, life will be easier. I'll flourish. Like it's hard because it's not meant for me to do. If it's easy, then I'm meant to do it. It's just led down a deep spiral of just comfort seeking and stuff like that. Very real stuff. Nah, it took me a while. It took so much. I can't even say, I don't even, I'll, I'll cut it out type. I will, that's off the record type shit, but like, it took me a lot to realize how far I've strayed type shit. But yeah, so we reintroduced the wolves, but now that I introduce the wolves again, now that I'm not so naive, I do things that do challenge me. Now I have to be wary of the trout. the trout, the bears. I have to be worried about all that. Maybe that's my ego. You know, maybe not ego. I'm an egotistical person, but I'm not like make it about me. Cause realistically, I want to be forgotten. I think uh, deep down, like if I can be okay with being forgotten, I think I'll be fine. But there's a part of me that just wants the whole world to know who I am. That's what I mean by ego. I don't mean like let me show off, let me do this, let me do that. No, I just want to give myself to the whole world. I want everybody to know about Raph. Everybody to think he's a cool dude. And that's not realistic. That's that that desire, that's the trout suffocating the deep cut throat, throat, go, I don't know, trout. You know, that's suffocating away the need to just kind of be under the radar, be my own person, care about only my immediate people, stuff like that. I don't know. This is a little. This was just that. This is it. Just a little something I found interesting. Something I hope I can elaborate on more in the future. Maybe think about it, especially uh, being a senior. Maybe incorporate that into my senior research project. If there is a way to incorporate something like that, the way we're all connected, psych, maybe even nature. Uh, I don't know. I do not know. Hmm. Ooh, and drink some water. Drink some water. Hydration break. Ugh. But alas, mm, that's kind of. I think that's kind of all I wanted to get off my chest for a second. Very good book. That was just off one chapter. I just thought of all that. Um, and that's kind of the basis of the book, just like the way things are connected like that. And I'm kind of trying to do that at a human level, social human level. I think finding more connections is kind of lit. Maybe brainstorming more is definitely it. But this is my brainstorming. This is me just conjuring, thinking. Um, it's just, you know, it's not meant to be the answers or meant to be some big revelation. Or maybe this is your revelation, and if it is, hey, I'm glad I could help you. But maybe not revelation. This is just clarity, a moment of clarity, a moment to just put something out there for the universe to hear. It's like a manifestation. Just put all that energy out there and see what see what the universe gives back. The universe is it's a giver. It gave us this life. It gave us everything basically. Without it, we're nothing. But also, without us, the universe is nothing. Because if nothing is conscious enough to be able to perceive it, then does it really exist? That's the thing about everything, I feel like. Does anything really even have a purpose if it nothing I mean nothing has a purpose. Nothing ever does a purpose. We give things purpose, but if there's nothing there to even have a feeling about then does it even truly exist? You know? I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, I'm young. I have a lot of life to experience. I'm only 20, almost 21. About 2-ish months. I mean, August. So about a month, 24 days to be fully. Ugh, I still got time. And most people live till like they're 80, so I've only lived a quarter of my life, and I've had a pretty good life. So dude, I can't wait till I'm 40. What? That's exciting. My 20s, my later 20s. I'm so excited for my later 20s. Hopefully by then, late 20s and early 30s, I hope to lay the foundation of just kind of what I want the rest of my life to be. This is just the foundational stage. I'm kind of just building up the foundation right now. Um, like kind of putting the rubric together. This is the teacher thinking of the assignment, What am I what do I want to get done? What do I want to achieve? All that, and then hopefully have an active like plan, actively be working on it when I'm like later 20s, early 30s, and then mid 30s, later 30s, just have it all boom. Maybe not all there, just a lot of it just already, and then I just boom, it's like the cake base, and then after that it's just the frosting on top. I don't know. Yeah, at some point I know probably want to have kid. I want to have a dog. I'm not a very big dog person, but I feel like I need to have a dog. Learn how to care for a dog. Learn how to be patient with a dog before I can have kids. Because I feel the same way I feel about a dog. I feel like is the same way I feel about a kid right now. And if I had to take care of one, which isn't the best. Oh, it is not great. So maybe in this way I could like kind of work my way into it. I mean, I could get a cat, but that's kind of cheating. Cats are easy. Dogs require a level of work. And I think that's kind of what I need at some point. I mean, I have Kaya and I learn with her, but it's I like I said, it's not really what I'm focused on right now. I'm focused on a lot, but we'll see. Uh, yeah. Anyways, let's not get all grim about my future and all that. Still have a lot of time to go. I still got a lot of things I want to do, even today. So we're gonna call it a day for now. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for just listening for a little bit or whatever. If you like, follow. If you like the episode, like, follow, subscribe, hit the plus button, donate, put money in the I don't have a Patreon. I don't have I there's literally no way I financially benefit from this, but let me like say that I'm going to just in case. So like, subscribe, donate, Twitch Prime in the chat, all that jazz. Do all that. And yeah, I'll I'll see you guys later. This is definitely, I know this is, I don't know. There's going to be episodes like this where I kind of just talk about this like psychology thing that I just got going in the back of my mind. And if you guys like that, let me know. If you don't, let me know. And yeah, I'll Midwest goodbye a little bit more. Nah, I'm just playing. I'm just gonna end it. Hey, have a good one. Peace.